Wounds, wisdom, and the word. Wounds, wisdom, and the word. Now here are your hosts, Jamie and Doug.
Well, hello and welcome to yet another episode of Wounds, Wisdom, and the Word. I am Jamie Shepherd and my companion here, Mr. Doug Gregory. We want to first start off by apologizing for missing last week. But it's real interesting how when you just allow time and space for things to happen, they just serve you up a wonderful gift on a silver platter. And that brings us to the title of today's show. It's called Sometimes Life Happens, right? Doug, there's an expletive bumper sticker out there, um, doo-doo happens. I'll censor that later if we need to. But I can recall going and seeing Forrest Gump long time ago. I'm dating myself in the theater, and he's on this big long run. And I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but hopefully those who are listening who have they're just picturing it in their minds right now, right? He's running, and this guy's like, "Hey, I need an idea for a t-shirt," and he gets splashed with mud, and he hands him a t-shirt, and he wipes his face, and he's like, "Man, you just run through a big pile of, beep." And Forrest looks over at him and says, "It happens." And when he looks at the t-shirt, there's a smiley face on it, right? I have just always really got a kick out of that because I don't know, I guess I've been living that for the majority of my life. And Doug and I have been talking leading up to starting our episode today, just and I kind of brought up this baseball analogy about you're standing there waiting for the pitch to come, and it's a fastball, and all of a sudden you're just not ready for it, and it hits you. But then you look up and you realize there's like 6 different pitchers out there, all throwing fastballs at you. And I think one of the things we kind of want to talk through today is, how do you allow time and space for the bruise that fastball left? How do you allow time and space for that to heal without it completely taking you out of the game? And so I'm going to kind of hand it over to Doug here and let him talk to us a little bit about what he's gone through in the past week to 10 days.
Yeah, it's been interesting. The last time we recorded was on the 9th, I believe it was. Of course, everybody knows the 10th now knows that was the day Charlie Kirk got shot. But the 10th for me was nuts. That's a very calm way of putting it.
And I want to just kind of add, Doug and I had spoken that, like, he and I had a conversation this morning of the 10th, okay, before all of these other events unfolded. I think honestly the Charlie Kirk thing probably may have even happened while we were conversing, but we didn't talk anymore after that. He ended up reaching out to me later that day, or maybe Thursday, and just kind of telling me what all had happened. And yeah, and I was just kind of like, holy moly.
Yeah. Well, Thursday didn't start off well. Woke up and just didn't feel physically well. Felt sick to my stomach, but during the course of trying to get everything going that day, had something, and I still don't exactly know what caused it, where it come from, but had something kind of trigger something from my past. I haven't talked a lot about my journey here thus far, but I'm done 4 or 5 years ago now. I guess probably 4. Got called out to the home of a 3-month-old that passed away during a nap, SIDS, and saw the baby, saw the whole 9 yards. But what kind of messed me up was watching the mom. And then, I was supposed to leave there, go pick up my kids at 3 o'clock, and everything's supposed to be fine again. And I was not fine. I thought it broke something inside of me. Probably more what happened was it brought a bunch of stuff up that I didn't even know was there. And been working through a lot of stuff. But anyway, Thursday or Wednesday morning, I get triggered. I'm laying in the bed, flopping like a fish, convulsions and I've had some pretty severe panic attacks through the years. Some even kind of dissociative type where you feel like you're kind of pulled out of your body looking at yourself type deal. But even after that, I was just in a funk, I couldn't function. I was in a very depressive state, crying uncontrollably, just waves of sheer terror. I mean, just like I'm in a mess. Okay. Talked to Jamie some, was able to feel better somewhat. So I worked for, I don't know. I finally, of course, I had a day's worth of work I need to get done. Of course, that wasn't happening, but for probably an hour and a half, around 1 o'clock, okay, I felt better a little bit. I could function. I could sit down and try to do something. So went to go pick kids up. I've got 3 boys, one in high school, one in middle, one in elementary school. So dad taxi requires a flow chart and a lot of turning around because you just missed the school.
Vehicle.
Yeah. Got a Denali. It ain't that nice, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, we got a bus. If we'd had one more kid, we'd had bought a Sprinter van. I'm just saying, we cut it off,
yes.
Yes. But we got kids. Well, 2 of the kids. One of the kids was in Nashville with my wife. Had to go see a specialist over some stomach issues. Nothing, nothing super serious. This appointment was actually on the calendar for October, and then we had it changed to September, or whatever it was, September the 10th. Okay. And didn't realize what a major thing that was going to cause, in a good way and a bad way. Get my 2 kids picked up. I went over to one of my elders' house, also a good friend, sitting there talking, and my wife calls me. My wife calls me in a panic, and rightfully so. Basically, when the valet went and got the vehicle and went to pull up in the valet lane, he goes and grabs a gear shifter, goes to jerk it back up in park. Probably too hard, but anyway, it was probably about ready to break anyway, but broke the shifter linkage underneath the car. And vehicle is stuck in reverse, and you can't do nothing, right? Except go backwards. And so,
which is less than helpful in a lane full of parked cars. Just saying.
You need to go forward. Yeah. So he cuts the vehicle off, which now that he's cut it off and it's in reverse, it won't crank back up, So my wife calls me, and we don't exactly know what's going on with the vehicle at this moment. I mean, looking back, anyway, it's pretty obvious. But so my good friend throws me a jump box because we think the battery might be dead, and says, "I'll take care of your boys. I'll teach your class tonight. This Wednesday night, I've got to teach class, and go get her." So I head off out of Elkton, headed towards downtown Nashville, and I make it probably 25 miles or 25 minutes or so down the road, outside the little town of outside between Guthrie and Clarksville. And I'm on the phone trying to explain to a valet how to jump an automobile, which is kind of like trying to eat ramen noodle through a phone. You go here, do this, don't touch them, do this. When I'm on the phone, and in front of me, the car directly in front of me swerves left and hits another vehicle in oncoming traffic, and just boom. I mean, kind of looks like she hit IED or something. I mean, I don't know what that looks like, but I imagine, if you've ever witnessed a car wreck, it is a violent thing. The car that was in front of me, she basically gets hit square on in the passenger side door, Nobody was in the car but her, thank goodness. But it picks the car up, flings it around, and when it lands on the side of the road back where we were driving. So this car gets hit and starts spinning, and then when it lands, it lands over here right in front of me. And of course, we're running, 50, 60 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of a sudden in front of you, here's, days of thunder and cloud of smoke. And, so I'm on the phone with my wife, and I'm like, wreck in front of me, got to go. Hang the phone up, drop it. I mean, the road's blocked completely with just glass and just, all the carnage it was. So I just rip it up and park and turn the flashers on. And, because nobody's going nowhere. And before I get out of the truck, the lady that was in front of me that took the worst of the brunt of the accident, I start to get out of the truck, and she bails out of the vehicle, and she didn't have a seatbelt on. Airbags caught a lot of it, but basically the angle at which she hit, she got thrown in the passenger side windshield and was basically from here over was cut up really bad and was bleeding profusely everywhere. I run over there to her, try to get her to calm down and sit down and hold pressure on her face, and she does sit down, but like she can't function. She's in shock. I mean, to give you an idea of how hard she got hit, okay, if you've ever noticed, your car door usually has either a bolt or a piece of whatever, but it's called a striker. And then on the door, there's a mechanism that latches that. And that's what holds the door shut, right? On her car, I was trying to look for her phone after they got her in the ambulance, and the passenger side door was still shut. It was latched. You could see that bolted striker. But below that, the door and the frame of the car had moved so much that you could see daylight and stick your hand through the gap with the door shut. So this car took a lick. I mean, just so this woman thinks she's dying, and I know there was a lot of blood. I'm not a medical professional. My wife's a nurse. I've seen my wife, bail up in the middle of an accident or bail in the middle of an emergency situation and go to work. And, I know she's cut up real bad. I know there's a lot of blood, and not a medical professional, but, blood's supposed to be on the inside, not the outside. You don't have an unlimited supply, so it's got to stop. That's all I know. And, I start trying to talk to this woman and calm her down, and I'm trying to get her to hold her hand on her face, but she won't do it. So I've got to have something to stop the bleeding. I can't really just put my hand on her face because she's got glass everywhere, So I'm gonna cut. If I just put my hand on her head, I'm gonna cut me. So it's got to be some kind of interference. And like for a split second, I thought about pulling my shirt off, and I thought nobody will see that, and I don't really want to lose a shirt right here in the middle of Clarksville. I would have, but I turned around and there are two people. Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be bad before I pull the shirt off. Not that I don't want to, but I turn around and there's two people standing up on the road that got out and were watching, and I'm like, I need something to stop bleeding. And they run and grab me a blanket. So I eventually wind up kind of sitting on the ground, but I wound up behind her, holding pressure on her head, like, and basically just keep trying to calm her down, talk to her. My name's Doug. I'm right here with you. Like, one of the things she says to me is, I'm never going to get to see my kids again. Tell me about your kids. Talk to me. And little boy, little girl, and I'm just anything I can think of. My car. How am I going to get to work? Well, I was like, that is a problem for future you. That is not a problem for today. Okay, you're going to be fine. You're going to survive. You're going to get to see your kids again, and Since then, I've talked to this woman several times, and I'm like, I was about 78% sure when I was telling you that you were going to be fine. You know, I didn't really realize how bad it was. Ambulance crew gets there very quickly. They load her on the back of the bus, and she actually winds up coding on the bus for loss of blood. Like, she quit breathing. They was able to give her whatever they need to do to correct that. They life flighted her to Skyline. And then I'm like standing here in the middle of this crash scene, you know, and there's fire people showing up, and you know, there's like one sheriff's deputy, and you know, I was already didn't feel the best because that morning my wife is stranded in the middle of Nashville, and she is very, very upset, and like I say, understandably, you know. But now, you know, kind of like I told Jamie and some other people, like, we made an episode about trauma, and the universe was like, all right, I'll give you something to talk about. So anyway, finally filled out whatever I needed with the troopers and give them my information, and went on about my life. So I get during this time, my wife had called her father to try to come to her because she didn't know if I was in the accident. She didn't know if my vehicle was immobilized. Like, she's trying to get some help. So it was probably 45 minutes or so before I could get back to the phone and call her and let her know I was all right and I'm back headed your way, and so on and so forth. But when I get down there to the parking garage, we're at Vanderbilt Children's. So if you've ever been to Vanderbilt Children's, there's the, what's it, South? I think it's the South Garage. So I roll up in there, and my father-in-law is there. He got there probably 3 or 4 minutes before I did. But he jacked the vehicle up, and anyway, during this process, I was able to figure out what's going on with shifter linkage. But like, at one time, I'm under the car, and the vehicle moves. Which, if you've ever worked on any automobiles, the last thing you want to happen when you have a vehicle jacked up is for it to move. Because when it moves, the jack or jack stand or whatever you've got under it stays stationary. And to make a already stressful day even more stressful, and I didn't really realize this till later on, but like, well, I think it's like the last time I got out from under the vehicle, the jack, you know, supposed to be straight up. It's now laying like this. So on top of everything else that happened, the automobile didn't, but it almost fell on me, and it would have either pinned me, crushed some ribs, or I would have suffocated because I couldn't breathe. You know, it would come down at least 2 inches probably, and I'm not a thin individual to start with. So, I mean, it would have been a bad day on top of a really bad day. Or I guess it was a bad day. It was a stressful day. It would be a proper way to. So everything's kind of settled now, and the adrenaline. I had enough adrenaline flowing probably to kill a horse, and trying to drive through 20 whatever avenue in Nashville is stressful enough without everything else that's went on that day. So it was a rough trip back, but made it back home, and got the kids situated, and just kind of like sat down for a minute to breathe. And I thought, I wonder who this, because when I went through the accident, like, I knew I'd seen this girl before, but I could not place her to save my life. You know, couldn't think of a name, couldn't think, you know. Well, I sat down and opened up Facebook, and the first thing I see is a message, and it was from her husband. It was a message, it was a post. And this is a guy who I met a couple of years ago through, he worked at O'Reilly's, and I go to the parts store every once in a while. But this guy, he was a great guy, and I mean, we didn't hang out or nothing, but he was a really good acquaintance. He was like, if I saw him out and about somewhere, we would stop and talk, you know, for 10, 15 minutes and just catch up like we had never left, you know, that kind of guy. And I call him on Messenger, and he doesn't answer immediately, but he calls me right back. And I'm like, was your wife in an accident? And he's like, first of all, they live 3 miles from the accident. He ran 3 miles in a pair of Crocs in 16 minutes. Like Forrest would have got past, I believe, you know. on that run. But he saw me down there. I didn't see him. And when I called him, he's like, Doug, he said, all my wife keeps saying is Doug was there and he saved my life. And you could have poured me in a 5-gallon bucket. I just wilted. Like my wife took the phone and like kept talking and I just lost it. So that was Wednesday.
Oh, but the
Started
story's not over.
Yeah. So get talking to them. They're in Skyline in Nashville, and like they didn't ask me for nothing. They didn't like. They were just thankful that I was there. And I didn't really. I would not wish. I wouldn't wish this wreck on anybody. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more going on that day for them than that wreck, and there was a lot more going on for me that day than that wreck. But like that was a moment in time where we were brought together, and they needed a lot of help, and we've been able, myself and mainly our church family here at Westside. Um, I mean, what car seats got destroyed in the wreck. 2 new car seats next day. Uh, just on and on I could go with this story that, my church family has went above and beyond to meet those needs. There was a monetary need that needed to be met, and they give, I think at last count, probably almost $1,000 over top of what that monetary need was. And then before we got to pay for this medicine that was needed, uh, basically God got them approved to have the medicine paid through another program. So then that money's been turned loose to help them another way. I mean, it's just like, you know, I can't be more proud of Westside. I can't brag enough. But so Thursday, I figure out that they're in Skyline. She's supposed to have surgery, and like, I don't know. There's part of me that would love nothing more than to stay home, but I don't know. I had to go see her. I had to go see him. Like I just, this woman almost died. Not in my arms, but in front of me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the husband, and uh, we had done a craft fair back at the end of May, and I do some knives, and I piddled in a lot of different things. But they had the booth right behind me that day. She was doing the little crochet like stuffy animals, and we just sat talked back and forth all day. Like there was a connection there, and I didn't realize what that was getting ready for. um, but so I go down. Thursday, and uh, anyway, he needs a ride. Like he rode an ambulance to the hospital, so he's not been back home to get anything for her. So I wind up bringing him back to his hometown, and I don't know, just I was literally, if you've ever been to Skyline in Nashville, you have to park in Egypt, right, to get to the hospital. So I'm walking across the parking lot, and he's down there on the edge of the parking lot, and I walk up to him, and he's like, "Do you have any idea how big a God thing it is that you were there right there at that moment yesterday?" And I mean, he was just like running 90 miles a minute. And I'm like, well, let me add another layer to this. The only reason I was there is because my wife's vehicle broke, and he had already found that out somehow. But it was just, and this is a guy who did not have any church interaction before. Had a child die when he was 19 in his arms, and was very adamant atheist. And uh, Wednesday the wreck. Thursday I went and saw him in Skyline. Monday night he obeyed the gospel. Uh, and I mean, I didn't set out to say, hey, let me use this thing to but it just happens. And, you know, one of the things I was talking with Jamie was like, Jamie, what are you supposed to feel? What are you supposed to feel when somebody looks at you and says, hey, you saved my wife's life? Are you supposed to be proud? Are you supposed to be happy? Are you supposed to be like, yay, I did that? Or, I mean, like, because, I mean, all I could do was cry for one thing, but like, I'm like, I didn't do anything special. Like anybody in their right mind, if they're behind that vehicle, when the wreck happens, they need to stop. They need to get out. And I mean, you ain't got to be a rocket scientist to figure out, hey, they're bleeding out of their head and you need to stop that. Like, I mean, and, you know, one of the things Jamie told me, she's like, well, there's probably a lot of things you can feel, but like, you ought to feel grateful that it was you. And I don't know, that kind of hit me a different kind of way. I don't know, what was your
Well,
perspective on
and
all
what
that?
I really, what I also said to Doug that day was there are a lot of people who wouldn't have done what he did. And that was my reasoning in being grateful that it was him. I can tell you, I've never met this couple. Don't, I've not encountered them through my work with transformation or anything like that. But in my in my heart of hearts, I know they were grateful that it was Doug who stopped that day. And because had it been one of those people that turn their, turn a blind eye or say, "Oh, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to run risk of a lawsuit, or I don't want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing." They might not have everybody and have everything that they currently do. And I think this man obeying the gospel is a perfect reflection of how those circumstances on that day changed his perspective on life and especially on spirituality. You know, emotions are complicated little boogers. And while we are taught and it is encouraged even in scripture that you don't follow your emotions because, by the way, they can get you into a lot of trouble. Don't know if
Mm-hmm.
everybody out there is aware of that. But it doesn't mean we don't feel them.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we don't, that God wants us to deny them, because he absolutely doesn't. And when hard things happen, when life happens, and we find ourselves in the middle of a very difficult season or even an unknown season, praise him. Praise him, love him, worship him, because he's the one with all the answers. Not me, not Doug, not your mama and your daddy and them, not the person that you meet at the parts store. Um, but he has all of the answers. And our emotions at times can lead us down a different path.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I said was I felt like Wednesday that I barely held it together. Like I barely held it together that morning. And then, you know, and my wife didn't do anything wrong. My wife was upset and she didn't know how to, and she's calling me for help. And there's a part of that as a man, like I want to be able to reach through the phone, take the phone and just like reach my arm up to it and like, okay, and you're good, but I can't do that. And like, okay, I'm coming to you. I'm hammered down. I'm trying to go as hard as I can go. Kaboom, right in front of me. And like, and there's part of me that like, at one point it's like we can I called a shop in Nashville and it's going to be like $150 to tow it and another 100 to look at it. And I'm like, in my mind, I wanted to like hit the moon, but I was like, honey, if that's what you want to do, go right ahead. I don't care. But like, I'm trying to get to you to help you, and because I know, okay, first of all, you can't drive a rollback up in a parking garage. There may be a record that you can get in there, but like, there's no good way to tow this vehicle, first of all. Okay, so now we're talking about pushing it out of the parking garage out in the middle of the street, which if you've ever been 23rd Avenue, 22nd Avenue, any of those roads in Nashville, it ain't like you can just push it out in the middle of the road for 5 minutes and load on the rollback. That's not a great option. That's stressful. And in my mind, I'm driving down here before and after the wreck going, God, what's wrong with this vehicle? Like, we've got to drive this thing out of here. That's the only good option that exists is driving that automobile out of that garage. And that's what we did. Baling-wired it together and like very slowly pull it down in drive. Go home, very slowly put it in park.
That is some redneck ingenuity.
Well,
at its best.
When I got home the next day, a day or two later, when I went to go fix it, it's still wired perfectly together. I think it would have been fine to just keep on running it. Like, I mean, I like to say I did it. I didn't do it, but
somewhere somebody is running Baling-wire on their shift
me and the good Lord wired together. Me and the good Lord fixed a lot of things, that I should have been able to fix. But I mean, at the time, it was incredibly stressful. And at the time, everything's on fire and everything's falling apart and everything's like, and even like, I'm thinking, okay, I'm not the one getting life flighted. I'm not the one screaming, I'm never going to see my kids again on the side of the road in a pool of my own blood. But it don't make you feel no better. I know that. I don't feel that. But one of the things I said to Jamie and a few other people was like, I feel like I barely held it together Wednesday. And usually in my mind, that would be equated to you almost blowed it up. You almost didn't do it, I guess is where my mind would naturally go. But, and it seems silly, but like barely holding it together is holding it together. Barely holding it together is a success.
Kind of like at Baling-wire on that shifting linkage.
Hey, I mean, I bent it over that one last little time and it went click and it popped right in the spot and it like, I thought that'll work, maybe. I mean, we'll see, first dudes fall apart again. I mean, if we can get it down and drive one time, she can drive it all the way home. She ain't got to move the gear shifter. I mean, everywhere you go, you don't move it but one time when you get there or when you leave and when you get back. I'm like, and they're like, we ain't got to have it when we get back. We'll just set the parking brake and turn it off. It'll be at home. I got jacks. I got all the stuff at home. Just got to get out of here. Can't be here.
Can't be here.
But like, I guess one of the things, the reason I said I need to crash, I needed somebody to help, was everything, a lot of the trauma work I did, I realized that something happened to me at a young age that I didn't realize. And like, I was kind of down in a funk over it. And this helped me not only get out of that funk, but also like start to be like, you did do it. You did hang on. Like, you're not, I don't know, a failure. You're not whatever. Like, I don't know, that I would have normally told myself, oh, you barely held it together, which means you basically blew it up. And next time you may not be able to barely hold it together. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying I ain't never going to mess up again, but like that day I didn't. And that's okay. It's okay that I did a good thing. It's okay that I held it together. It's all right.
Well, sometimes Baling-wire is all we got, Doug. And I know that that a lot of people don't like to hear that. A lot of people think, well, I say a lot of people, I know a lot of people who would say, it's this all or nothing mindset. You either got it together or you don't. There's no gray area. In other words, there's no Baling-wire. But that is just simply not true. I think probably to just continue with that line of thought, it was God and that Baling-wire that fixed that truck in that garage and got Annetta and your baby home, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's God that it didn't move another 3 inches and fall completely off the jack and kill me. I mean, underneath, because it wouldn't just been me, it would have been her sitting in the vehicle above me. Like, I mean,
and I feel like those situations are the ones that can be the most difficult to process.
Yeah.
Because many times Christians are the ones who are in that, well, I got to have it all together mindset, right? I can't mess up. I can't make a mistake. I can't make a wrong choice or a bad decision. And that's just not the God that I serve. The God that I serve meets us in a place wherever we are with love and compassion and understanding. Doesn't mean he doesn't show up with the rod of correction at times, because he most certainly does.
Yeah.
But it means that at the end of the day, he loves us through that difficult season, if it happens to be the consequences even of a bad choice. And he says, okay, go do better. Go do better.
Yeah, I mean, I had a phone call on the way down from one of our deacons, but also one of my best friends in the world. And his wife had found out from Annetta that, hey, all this chaos is going on. And he called me to check on me. Okay, this kind of guy he is. And he's like, Doug, you probably saved somebody's life today. And I'm like, no, I didn't. She's just bleeding. And I didn't have any idea at the time how serious. I didn't know she had coded in the band, life flighted. And even later on, Monday night, the husband looked at me and he said, no, you didn't maybe save her life. He said, the Skyline doctor, when we got down there, said, I don't know who stopped the bleeding, but if they didn't, sir, you wouldn't be here. So he said that to me on the way down, and I guess it's always been a part of me that, I don't know, that wanted those kind of statements. Like there was some kind of longing inside of me that wanted to be whatever, but at the same time, if somebody says something like that, it don't feel like it's for you. It's not right. Another person said, something equivalent of, I used to think this other person could do anything, but then I met you. And, squalling and the whole night, and those two kind of things played on loop in my head for a day or so. And why can't I just take that in? Why can't I just say, yeah, part of what was so disturbing with my trauma work, I guess I'll call it, coming up to this point, is who am I? If there's this thing in my past that I know about that's kind of affected me, okay, then how much of my life has not just been, well, I'm the shy kid, or I'm this, or I'm that, but how much of it has been every alarm bell I've got in my head's been going off the whole entire time, and I just think that's normal. I just think it's the way you are. And you tell yourselves, and I hear it all the time with people. I had a guy I was talking to a while back, and he said it 3 or 4 times in 2 minutes. Well, I wasn't born with a gene that lets you do fill in the blank. I wasn't born with a gene that will. And I told him, I said, stop. I said, you know what you just told me 4 times in 2 minutes? He's like, what? And I said the sentence back to him. And he didn't even know he was saying it. I said, first of all, there's not a gene that's linked to that thing. And second of all, that's a lie that you told yourself to kind of cope with what's happening to you in your life. Do you realize that? And I mean, you could just feel the light bulb go off in his head. Like I said, other people aren't magically born with that gene either. I said, but there's these lies that we tell ourselves, that, and it's just a coping mechanism. And they help us survive at the time, but then they become bricks in a backpack. I've dealt with people who have just been in horrendous life situations, and they beat themselves up over the things they did in the past. And I'm like, as bad as those things were, you had to do those things to survive. Those things, I'm talking about kids. One guy one time, like, I run away from home and come across the border at like 11 and come to America on my own. And I'm like, you had to do what you had to do to survive. Nobody's supposed to be on their own at 11, in a foreign country, in a place where you can't speak the language. I mean, like, but then it becomes this baggage that we get hung up with. That, yes, it served you at the time, or 11-year-old or 8-year-old, whatever, you didn't know no better. I was working with another individual the other day, and I said, okay, I want you to think about, so we're going back and we're talking about some heavy stuff. I mean, and I said, I need you to split yourself up just a minute, and I want you to think about 9-year-old you and 32-year-old you. What did 9-year-old you know? Well, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Okay. Now it's easy for 32-year-old you to know that. But like, you got to understand that when you go back and think about this thing, like, you can't think about it like 32-year-old you. You have to consider this as, what did 9-year-old you know? And you didn't have all this figured out yet. You didn't know all these things. In your mind, this event that was not technically like somebody dying, but like, this event was a death. You might as well treat it like that, because 9-year-old you didn't know no better. And I don't know, it's so hard to go back. Jesus talks about a speck in your eye and a log in somebody else's, or a speck in their eye and a log in yours. I mean, and it's a lot easier to see somebody else's stuff stuck in their eye than it is to see your own log in your eye, because you're so close to it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, Jamie does professional counseling work. She's over there. I keep pointing her away. Jamie does professional counseling work. And a lot of what she does, I mean, she's helping people process. She's giving them coping skills. She's doing all these things. But some of the best and most powerful moments she gives people is a perspective of themselves from the outside. You've never seen yourself this way. Because in reality, this, and this, you grew up in this home where all this chaos goes on. I mean, you've been good on Jerry Springer, and you didn't know any different. You thought that's what everybody lived in. You don't have enough perspective to know at 9 years old that, we're pretty messed up.
Well, and what you learn, honestly, and you've probably seen this in your work too, is that even dysfunction can be comfortable, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you think about what's comfortable in life, it's, sometimes people think comfort or comfortable and they think, oh, fuzzy robe and slippers and coffee and a fire. No, no. Comfort is simply what is familiar.
Familiar.
Familiar. Not functional, not healthy, not any of those things. It's just what you are most familiar with. I mean, I myself you know. I had an alcoholic for a father, and I can remember going to my first sleepover um, at a friend's house. I went to a real tiny elementary school. Shout out to Oakmont up in New Deal. Um, and like my whole class had probably 25 kids in it, and
Yeah.
like half girls, half boys, something like that. So anyway, when a girl had a birthday sleepover, everybody got to go, right? Well, I go to the sleepover and I am just flipping amazed at her dad compared to mine. Like,
Y'all live like
what's
this?
going on here? Yeah. Like, what? There ain't no bud in the fridge? Like, where's the Coors or the Michelob? Or, like, what is this?
The
I had
financial
no
life.
idea. Right? I had no idea. Right? And it was in that moment that I understood and came to appreciate that there was a different way to do life.
Yeah.
And it was also in that moment that I kind of made up my mind I wanted something different. Now that grew, the older that I got.
Yeah.
And believe me, I made lots of mistakes and will continue to make them as long as I breathe air. But the point is, a lot of these clients that I sit with, they don't see themselves as somebody who just was surviving, just surviving whatever was going on in their family or in their life, or um, they label themselves as broken or unworthy, or um, nobody wants me, nobody will have me, I'm undesirable, I'm unlovable. And that is usually the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah, because it's like they think I'm damaged and I'm broken. And the reality is like you're freaking amazing that you're sitting here and not have
Yes.
imploded into 19,000 pieces. Like I was
Yes.
talking to a 14-year-old probably a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, you know, kid doesn't have a great home life, and I was like, you understand, like you're a good kid, and you're just a good kid because you want to be a good kid. Like I said, my boys my boys have to be somewhat decent because we're gonna make them be. And you interpret it that whatever you want to. Like, but
Yep.
you know, it's got to be horrible having a father who's a preacher because when you need a lecture, I mean, I can just whip one up. You know,
Yep.
uh,
Ad lib.
but I was like, you ain't got people to show you. You ain't got people to show you how to be a good kid, and you ain't got people to uh, have a good environment, and you are anyway. And like you can just tell he was like emotional on the other end of the phone. It's just like you don't realize what you're actually doing in spite of your environment.
Yeah.
So
Well, and one of the things that I always try to do with those clients is we celebrate, right? We celebrate those parts that help them survive and that got them through the difficult seasons.
yeah,
But we also kind of put them to bed, right? We relieve them of duty and say,
yeah.
thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you've done for me. But I don't
Yes,
need
baby.
that anymore.
Yeah,
I don't need you to play that role for me any longer.
yeah, yep. So anyway, that's one crazy day.
Yeah, yeah, just one of many.
One of many.
Um,
There's been a few since then, but yeah, that's that's
yeah,
probably enough.
one of many. probably a good place for us to leave this story today.
Yeah.
I think our plan is to kind of tiptoe into that transgenerational trauma pond next time and discuss. I mean, honestly, I think there's a lot of valid points in that's going to relate back to some of the stuff we talked about today.
Yeah.
Those some of those learned survival techniques. Where do you think they came from? Yeah, as
Yeah.
Doug put it a couple weeks ago, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So, yeah,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. Well, I guess we'll close out there. I do want to leave everybody with a quick verse, though. I think it supports some of what Doug talked about today, and that is Hebrews 13:2 from the New King James. It says, "Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by some have unwittingly entertained angels." So
Never
just keep
know.
that in mind. Never know.
Never know. Never know who's riding in the car in front of you.
Nope.
Well, we hope y'all have a good day. We look forward to seeing you the next episode. Thank you for listening. Tell somebody about us, and it really helps us out. Anyway, God bless. Have a great day.
Yep. Peace.